Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We are so honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Podchaser, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Wen Stanley. He is joining us from the United Kingdom to introduce us to his brand new picture book, My Grandma Has Dementia. We're really happy that Alex is joining us today. Dementia is a difficult issue that so many families have to deal with, and we're really happy that Alex has created this book to help families. We're really happy, too, that we get to invite you to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, where you can be part of our Reading with Your Kids family and download our free newsletter. That's right, we publish every 2 weeks, letting you know what has happened on the show, what's coming up, and sharing all sorts of other wonderful things. It's free, and it's available on our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Joining us right now from the United Kingdom, our guest is here to celebrate his debut picture book called My Grandma Has Dementia. Please welcome to the show, Alex Winstanley. Alex, how are you?
Hi, great, thank you. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Lovely to meet you, Jed.
It's really great to meet you, too. We have to get into it. My grandma has dementia. I'm imagining, the first thing that came to my mind as I was saying those during the introduction was I'm picturing a Saturday Night Live comedy sketch where, people come together and it's like, what could be the most outrageous kind of topic for a children's book? But this is really important, and I think it's certainly no laughing matter, and I think it's a book that's needed. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. So as the title suggests, the book is written about my grandma, and my grandma lived with dementia for a long time, and she was diagnosed with mixed dementia and vascular dementia over 10 years ago. And growing up, I was never too sure. Obviously, I noticed things. Myself and my sister would notice that my grandma would forget things or repeat things, and we knew there was something that wasn't sort of quite right in our heads, and we couldn't understand why my grandma was sometimes behaving differently. And then we realised that obviously when she had the diagnosis of dementia, why those patterns of behaviour were happening. And I wanted to try and help other children, young people to understand dementia in a better way, because like you just said, like you touched on there, Jed, a topic like dementia isn't widely spoken about. It's something that's a bit of a taboo subject at times, just like some of the other books that I've been writing about. And it's just not spoken about enough, particularly for children and young people. And it's not, children, I don't think, are encouraged to interact with people living with dementia to understand why they might be behaving in certain ways. And most importantly, how to support people living with dementia. Because, the reason that I wrote the book was to make people more aware of how to support people living with dementia, and also how to ease the anxiety of if you are a child or a young person and you have a family member living with dementia, there's going to be some worry and some anxiety like there was for myself and our family. And I grew up, seeing my mum delivering care to my grandma every day, for my entire life. And that obviously brought some worry and some anxiety as well, because I would think, why is my mum just caring for my grandma all the time? And hopefully this book helps helps children to understand that a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, I know in our family, we dealt with this, and it was incredibly difficult. It was incredibly difficult for me and my beautiful wife. My mom suffered from Parkinson's with dementia. And it was a very long and cruel and hard experience. Probably in my wife and I were just speaking about this the other day. One of the most difficult days and all of the years that my mom suffered with it, was a day that it was very obvious that she didn't recognize my daughter.
Right.
She was incredibly close to my daughter. We were with my mom every day, and my mom loved my daughter so much, and loved my son. But my daughter changed a lot. Girls change more. What my daughter looked like as a little girl compared to what she looked like as a teenager, it was a big difference. Yeah. And there was one day that we went in to see her, and I just knew, looking at the way my mom was staring at my daughter, that she didn't quite remember her. And I said to her, and I kind of helped my mom out, and I said, "Oh, hey, me and Alejandra are here to visit with you." And my mom was really wise, and so she faked it, like, "Oh yes, Alejandra, how are you? Nice to see you." But later that night, my daughter sat down with me and she said, Grammy didn't know who I was, did she?" And it's like, no, she didn't. And it was a heartbreaking day. I'll never forget it.
I bet. Yeah, I bet. That'd be a really difficult conversation. And I think that's why, with the book, the aim is that it starts those conversations for young people, for children and young people, between them and the parents or the teachers or the carers, because, like I say, with it not being spoken about or always understood widely enough, hopefully, the aim is for children, young people to read this book and then ask those questions, because, why is that person doing that? Why is Grandma in the book doing that? Or how's the best way to support Grandma, or in that sense? And, that example you're talking about now, I was very lucky. My grandma and I were very, very close. My grandma passed away just before Christmas. And it was really difficult, but at the same time, this book is now her legacy, and that's really exciting, because hundreds of people have bought the book around the world now, and having people getting in touch from all sorts of places across the UK, but across the world, as far as New Zealand, Australia, across the US, even somebody in Wisconsin who works for a charity called the Forget Me Not Fund, and they've just bought 100 books. Things like that is amazing. So just to know that my grandma's legacy is living on through the book for children and young people around the world is amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And you're right, though. I think one of the reasons, and I'm just guessing, but I'm thinking one of the reasons that families have such a difficult time speaking about this subject is that parents don't know all the answers. And a lot of parents feel uncomfortable saying to their kids, "I don't know." And one of the things that we've talked about here on the show a lot is that admitting to your kids that you don't know all the answers, that can be one of the most important lessons, one of the most important messages you can give them, because we're not perfect as parents. No. And when we admit that to our kids, that brings us down off that pedestal, and I think we're better able to engage with our kids and then move forward together.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic point. I think I definitely agree. Parents and teachers and adults in generally don't like to discuss topics like this because, like you say, of that uncomfortability, and they don't feel comfortable with it. They don't quite always understand it. The same with any sort of difference. People are often fearful of difference, and what I don't want to happen is for children and young people to grow up being fearful of people living with dementia, or people living in care homes, for example. The book is there to highlight that actually people living with dementia can still love you. They still love you. They can still be loved, just as normal. Like my grandma and I had a very close relationship, like I say, and all the way through until she passed away. And, that means a lot to me, and that's what I want to try and get across to children and young people. And especially, my grandma lived in a care home as well for the last couple of years of her life, after living on her own and then also living with us for a while in our family home. And like I say, my mum provided daily care 2-3 times a day, and doing all sorts of things. And we were very, very scared about her living in a care home. And actually it was the best thing that ever happened, because my grandma had 2 of the best years of her life at Windsor House in Wigan, where I live, and it led to her being far more stimulated than she could ever been on her own or with us, and having a group of people in a community, and it was amazing. So I can't thank them enough, and there's some nods in the book to them as a thank you. But yeah, that's definitely something that, there's a lot of fear around dementia, and I think unless you've lived it and have that lived experience, then it's hard to understand. So like I say, hopefully this book tries to address some of those questions and start those conversations.
Yeah. I think one of the things that your book can kind of reminds us of is that human beings are constantly changing. And it's something that we accept readily with our kids, and we celebrate it. Our 2-year-olds, when they turn 5, they can do things that they could never do as 2-year-olds. And then when they get to be 7 and 10 and 15, well, they're discussing at 15. But no. But we accept that kids are changing, and we accept that, teenagers turn into young adults, and that's something that we accept. And I think that having these conversations can help us accept the fact that we continue to change throughout our lives. It's a little bit slower pace. And part of that change for a lot of people is, our mental functioning isn't as sharp as it was. Our memory isn't as sharp as it was. And, and that's a normal part of life. And it doesn't mean, as you said, it doesn't mean that you can't have fun. It doesn't mean that you can't have a loving, wonderful relationship with somebody who's changed and is suffering from a dementia.
Yeah, definitely. Like you say, people change and people are different throughout their lives. And I'm really passionate about promoting awareness of differences, but not just awareness, but also celebrating it as well. I strongly believe that differences should be celebrated, no matter that be, disability, gender, race, whatever it may be. The more diverse a society we can have, I strongly believe the better society we can have, and the more inclusive we can have, society we can have for everybody. And the more that children and young people see that those differences and become comfortable with them, and understand and accept and celebrate that people are different, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah. Did you always envision yourself being a children's author?
No. So my background's in teaching. So I was a teacher and a carer as well, for young disabled people. And then I set up a non-profit organisation off the back of that, delivering disability awareness training and social inclusion training to schools and community groups and businesses, through children through to staff and adults, all led by disabled young people. And that's something that I set up because of how passionate I am about inclusion and like I say, and promoting and celebrating differences. And that path then led me to writing the book, because when COVID hit last year, we weren't doing as much training in schools, and I wanted to find a way to still reach schools and children in schools. And one of the ideas I'd had is I'd always wanted to write a book about my grandma, just to explain dementia, and it was always in the back of my mind. So this seemed like the perfect opportunity. So I wrote the book last year, about sort of 8 to 10 months ago, and things just developed from there. And obviously spoke to the illustrator who's illustrated this book and the future books, and his illustrations are wonderful in telling the story and explaining things to children, and giving children the opportunity to pick up on little things and little hints, in the background and things that are going on, as well as creating, he knows that I really want the cast of characters to be super inclusive and diverse. So that's another aim as well. But yeah, that's where it sort of snowballed from. And suddenly I found myself being a children's author, which always sounds strange to say, because I never thought I would be doing that.
That's wonderful. Well, you mentioned the illustrator and the great relationship you had working with your illustrator. Let's give your illustrator a shout out.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So it's Adam Walker Parker. Adam illustrates this series of books, and this series is a focus on a range of different health conditions. For example, this first book's about dementia, but the next book coming out next week is about depression. And the next book about that, after that, is about cancer, and helping children and young people to come to terms with those conditions. And all inspired by people with lived experience and stories of people with lived experience of those conditions. So I spoke to Adam about it. Adam also illustrates on another series called The Abilities in Me, which is a really successful series in the UK, and that focuses on children living with different health conditions and different disabilities. So this is a spin-off series to The Abilities in Me, whereas that focuses on children. This one focuses on adults with different long-term health conditions. So, he does both books, and it's really nice because even in the Dementia book, you'll see a crossover of characters so there's characters from the Abilities series popping up in the background in these books as well, and vice versa, which is really exciting.
Yeah. As you were speaking, one of the beautiful things about a picture book is that it can be just as powerful an experience for an adult, for a parent to read, as it is for the kids who are reading the book or having the book read to them. And I think sometimes I remember back with my mom getting all these pamphlets and books and articles about Parkinson's and about dementia and how we can help. And to be honest with you, sometimes it was just too much information. And I think, being able to sit down and read a book like My Grandma Has Dementia would have been really helpful in some of those times.
I bet, yeah. I mean, honestly, Jed, the amount of people that have said that, which is so wonderful to hear, because when people say, people leave reviews on Amazon and they say, I wish this book was around when I needed to explain this to my children about their nanny or their grandpa or whoever it may be. That's something that obviously is really nice to hear. And, it means a lot, and that's why the book was written. But definitely with the illustrations, I've said to Adam, when we plan the illustrations together, we sort of plan it with a mindset of hoping that, if there was no words whatsoever, even in the book, then you would be able to see the story anyway, and have an understanding of what's going on just through the illustrations alone. The illustrations are absolutely amazing, and everybody comments on how fantastic they are. So yeah, big kudos to Adam for that.
Well, I know folks are going to want to know where they can go to learn more about My Grandma Has Dementia and the other books that you are going to be publishing in the series.
Yeah, so, it would be great if people can follow my pages on social media as an author. So that's on Facebook and Instagram at Alex Winstanley Author, or on Twitter at Alex W Author. And at the same time, the book, My Grandma Has Dementia, is readily available on Amazon.com, Amazon.uk, and Amazon worldwide. As will be the following books. So the next book is called My Uncle Has Depression. And I've been working with former sporting professionals who have lived with depression, who telling me their stories to help to inform the book. And also inspired by someone in my family as well who has bipolar, and that's where that one's come from, and that one's going to be available on Amazon really soon. So yeah, people can find the books on Amazon, and please do follow me on social media.
Before we go, we've talked a lot about how reading My Grandma Has Dementia can help kids, can help start conversations with families, can really kind of change families' experience in families' lives. I'm wondering, how did writing My Grandma Has Dementia change you?
Yeah, great question. I talked about this a lot, to be honest, with my wife and other people, because obviously the book was written when my grandma was alive, and my plan was to read the book with my grandma and show my grandma whenever I visited her and things like that. Obviously that changed and my grandma passed away, and that changed the context of, I suppose, my relationship with the book a little bit more. It became even more personal to me, and something I was even more passionate about. And yeah, it definitely helped with the grieving process as well, I find. So to know that, although my grandma's not here with us anymore, her legacy lives on. It definitely impacted that process and continues to impact it, which is wonderful. And I think that's helped in a really big way. So in terms of changing me in that sense, it's definitely had a big impact on me.
Yeah. And just as you were speaking, I just realized that this book is, its availability now is probably very, very timely and important, because all around the world, families are just now able to see their grandparents. Because of coronavirus, we haven't been able to visit our family members in nursing homes or care homes. We haven't been able to visit and sit down with our elderly family members. Now that the vaccines are rolling out, now that hopefully we've turned the corner and things are starting to get back to normal, families are going to get back together. And I'm imagining that, if you haven't spent significant amount of time with your elderly family, the changes that we've been talking about that are natural are going to seem all that much more magnified. Grandpa is really different than he was last year. We didn't experience that gradual change that we normally experience. It's like, wow. And so I think this book is really timely and can really make a difference in families' lives at this point in history.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Jed, and it's something, to be honest with you, that I haven't even spoken about. So I think you make an amazing point there, because it is definitely very timely. The fact that people being isolated in care homes or in their own homes or wherever, that's going to have had a negative impact on their well-being, their health as well. And it is going to be much more noticeable, especially for children and young people. So if they can at least have a book that says, well, look, this is what dementia can be about, and this is how it can impact people, and this might be why grandpa, grandma, whoever it is behaving or is feeling in such a way, then how good's that to try and help children and young people to understand that, and again, just to reduce that anxiety. So, it's an amazing point, and I really appreciate you picking up on that.
Yeah. We've had a really wonderful time speaking with the author of My Grandma Has Dementia, the debut picture book from our guest, Alex Winstanley. Alex, thanks so much for being part of our show.
Thank you for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's a first time in Reading with Your Kids history. We have a pair of twins on the show. That's right. Caroline and Catherine Brickley are here to celebrate the friendly bookshelf. What a neat concept of a book. You're going to have a lot of fun meeting these two talented writers. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book, we would love to help you tell the world all about it. 2 great ways that we can help you. First, you're most welcome to be a guest on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, it's free, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic children's book. We also have our really, really popular Certified Great Read program that can let parents know that your book is worthy of their consideration. There are literally thousands of children's books published every single month. You heard me right. Thousands of children's books published every single month. It's really hard for a book to stand out from that crowd, especially if you're an indie or self-published author. The Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program can help you. All you need to do to find out about both of our programs is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You'll find an author's click here button at the top of the page. You can scroll on down to Be a Guest or the Certified Great Read tab. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Alex Winstanley. Please be sure to check out My Grandma Has Dementia. Also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan, Helen Fraser, Justina Thompson. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I want to thank Augie the doggy for having my back here in the studio. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking through the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.